It's crucial that you make the right start-sit decisions at this point of the season. Maybe these 10 stats can help you make the correct one. And the first stat is 88%. That was the number of snaps Kendre Miller played in the fourth quarter after Alvin Kamara left very early in that quarter with an injury. The other running back, Jamal Williams, only played 3 snaps to Kendre Miller's 22 in that quarter. But I think what was most encouraging for Kendre Miller is he ran 58% of the routes. If he's going to be able to get all the snaps in this backfield, plus run the majority of the routes, that's also going to give him a path to catching passes. And look, Kendre Miller has been good this year so far. In 3 of the 4 games he's played, he's run for over 5 yards a carry. He's averaging 4.6 yards per carry on the ground this season. And the Packers are not a formidable matchup. They're just kind of middle of the road against running backs. So if Alvin Kamara does miss this week in this matchup, you got to think Kendre Miller is going to be an absolute workhorse running back who may even get you some pass catching work. You got to fire him up if he does. And the next stat you need to know is 76.5%. That was Jerome Ford's snap percentage in the second half after Nick Chubb left early in the second half with, unfortunately, a season-ending broken foot injury. But I don't feel quite as good about Jerome Ford being a workhorse like I do with Kendre Miller, because the Browns are probably going to call up D'Onta Foreman off the practice squad. And we've seen, for whatever reason, the Browns just don't treat Jerome Ford as a workhorse. But here's why I do really like Jerome Ford this week. Even if D'Onta Foreman does get called up, it's for his pass catching. You look at this matchup against the Bengals. Yes, the Bengals are a terrible defense, but they're okay against running backs, but they are terrible against pass catching running backs. Just last week, Tyjae Spears, 6 catches, 87 yards, and a touchdown against this defense just through the air. I think Jerome Ford can have similar success because he is the best pass catching back in this offense. He's the one that's going to get to run most of the routes and get those targets. And they got Dorian Thompson-Robinson starting, which means probably more checkdowns than we would see with Jameis Winston. So I think Jerome Ford still a fine start this week. I would certainly prefer Kendre Miller if Alvin Kamara is out, but I think Jerome Ford is probably your next best bet. The next stat you need to know is 50. That was the backfield split between Isiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt last week. That's right, an exact 50-50 split. They got the same amount of carries, the same amount of receptions. I don't really know why. I don't have an explanation for this because it looked like Isiah Pacheco was starting to get healthier, starting to take over this backfield coming back from that injury. And then last week it flipped to a true 50-50. I do wonder if the fact that the Chiefs have to play 3 games in an 11-day span, which is absolutely absurd, I do wonder if that's actually affecting them here. Maybe they're making a conscious effort like, hey, let's lighten Pacheco's workload over this stretch here, save him for the playoffs, save him for the stretch run. I'm really not sure, but it's going to be very hard to trust Isiah Pacheco this week after what we saw last week. Not to mention, this is a brutal matchup against a Houston defense that is top 4 against the run, bottom 5 against the pass. They are a pass funnel defense, very tough to run on, much easier to throw on. Sure, Pacheco could always fall into the end zone and score like almost any running back can on a weekly basis. But outside of that, I think you're going to be really disappointed if you start Pacheco. I think it's better to leave him on the bench this week. The next stat you need to know is 55%. That was the percentage of backfield carries Tyrone Tracy got last week over Devin Singletary. Only outcarried him 10-8, which was really odd because it looked like Tyrone Tracy had once again just completely taken over this backfield the week before. But even more concerning to me than the fact that he only had 2 more carries than Devin Singletary is the fact that he only ran 4 more routes, only had 1 more target, and he only got 1 of the 3 carries inside the 5-yard line. Devin Singletary got 2 of those. This is very concerning for Tyrone Tracy, especially in this matchup on the road against Atlanta. Yes, Atlanta is a bad defense, but they're pretty good against the run. That defensive line has been playing pretty well right now. They are actually 6th best against running backs right now, and they haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher on the entire season. Look, Tyrone Tracy was an absolute bust last week. If you played him and somehow advanced, I don't think there's any way you could start him this week. But I do think you can hit that like and subscribe button if you're enjoying the video and all the content we bring you every single week. The next stat you need to know is 22%. That was Cedric Tillman's target share in Week 7 when Dorian Thompson-Robinson started that game and played most of the game. He got benched with about 4 minutes to go in that game. And that was second only behind David Njoku. Meanwhile, Jerry Jeudy was way down at 10%. This is actually a sneaky good spot for Cedric Tillman. It looks like he's going to come back from that concussion. And oh, by the way, this is the same exact matchup they had in Week 7 against the Cincinnati Bengals. He had a very nice game that week. 10 catches, 76 yards, and a touchdown. Now, I'm not saying you should bench Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy's been so good. I think you probably have to still gamble on Jerry Jeudy this week. I'm nervous, but I think you have to gamble on him. But I did want to mention Cedric Tillman because this is actually a sneaky good spot for Cedric Tillman. If you're looking for a deep league flex or just a flex with upside, maybe a wide receiver 3 with upside, I think Tillman's got it this week. He was DTR's preferred option back in week 7 against the Bengals. Maybe he'll be his preferred option again this week. The next stat you need to know is 22.5%. That is Christian Watson's target share over the last 2 games. Now, it hasn't resulted in huge fantasy numbers, but it's by far the top of all Green Bay Packers pass catchers. He also has 3 red zone targets over that stretch and a very solid 7 catches for 170 yards over the last 2 games. Now he draws a fantastic matchup against the Saints defense, giving up the 6th most points to wide receivers and the 10th highest yards per reception to wide receivers, and they don't have Marshawn Lattimore anymore. Sure, Watson is very risky, as are all the Packers wide receivers every single week, but if you're the clear underdog in your matchup this week and you need to try to hit a home run, try to have a big play, a big touchdown, you could do worse than Christian Watson this week. But it would be impossible to do worse than Baker Mayfield's line on underdog of just half a yard. That's right, if you're new to underdog, you haven't tried it yet, go ahead, sign up. You're going to get this Baker Mayfield new customer special. He just needs 1 yard. You win that pick. Just make sure you join with promo code ENDGAME to get that free pick, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash. The next stat you need to know is 0. That was Darnell Mooney's catches, yards, and touchdowns in Week 15, joining Cooper Kupp in the 0 club. And now we're going to get rookie Michael Penix Jr. starting under center. Look, at least with Kirk Cousins, for as bad as he was, we knew Darnell Mooney was involved. We had seen Darnell Mooney have some nice games with Kirk Cousins. But with the rookie starting, this is just way too risky now. I know it's the Giants. I know it's at home, but still, we don't know what this target share is going to look like. We don't know how much the Falcons are even going to throw the ball in this game. Look, if you started Mooney last week and somehow survived that 0, please don't take that risk again. Way too risky here in Week 16. The next stat you need to know is 13th. That is where the Cardinals rank in terms of fantasy points allowed to slot wide receivers. This week, we get Adam Thielen, who did not have a big game last week in a spot where everybody pretty much started Adam Thielen. Look, Adam Thielen probably not going to be, a league winner, a wide receiver that's going to carry you throughout the playoffs, but this is a good spot for Adam Thielen, and he still did lead the team in targets last week. Not to mention Xavier Legette already been ruled out, so he could see even more targets. I know Jalen Coker is there, but Adam Thielen is still the slot wide receiver here. This is a good matchup for him against the Cardinals secondary that has given up some big games to slot wide receivers. I'm not going to tell you you have to start Adam Thielen this week, but I'm also going to tell you don't give up on him just because he didn't, have a big game last week. If Adam Thielen is your best option this week, go ahead, roll him out again. I think he comes through. The next stat you need to know is 20.6%. That was Dalton Kincaid's target share in Week 15, which tied Khalil Shakir for the team lead, and he finished second with a 25% first read percentage again, only behind Khalil Shakir. Now, he didn't have a huge fantasy game, but it wasn't bad. 4 catches, 53 yards. That's solid for a tight end these days. Now he gets the Patriots, who are allowing the 12th most fantasy points to tight ends. Look, Dalton Kincaid is certainly risky. We have seen Dalton Kincaid have many bad weeks, and you just never really know who's going to be the guy in this Bills passing attack outside of Josh Allen and maybe Khalil Shakir, of course. But if you're desperate for a tight end and Kincaid is still on the waiver wire, I certainly think there are much worse options than Kincaid this week. So go ahead, stream Kincaid if you need to. He was solid last week. I think he can at least be solid again this week. Then the last stat you need to know is 14. That is where Cooper Rush ranks among fantasy QBs since taking over the starting job in Week 11. In those 5 games, he has scored 17 or more fantasy points in 3 of them, and he's only gone under 14 fantasy points 1 time. Another big benefit here is he's only thrown through interceptions over that span, so he doesn't have that risk of killing you the way Jameis Winston did last week. Coming off a nice 3-touchdown game last week, he gets a Bucs defense at home that is allowing the 2nd most points to quarterbacks this year and the 3rd highest pass rate over expectation. Rush isn't my favorite streamer this week because I don't think he has the upside I'm quite looking for, but he has a very safe floor in this one. He likely will not bust for your fantasy team. So if you're looking for a safer streamer or maybe a good QB2 Superflex option, take a look at Cooper Rush. And definitely take a look at all the videos we got for you to help you win this important matchup this week. We got our Week 16 playlist with everything you need right here.